To Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When it comes to the money you spend every day, we have you covered every morning. Making money makes sense. Weekdays on CBS Mornings.
When weather turns extreme, CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real, you'll have time to get prepared. Feel the forecast. Streaming on CBS News.
It never has been negotiable. It never will be negotiable.
How soon will it be until you announce your final decision on the 2024 presidential run?
The season is what it is. I mean, there's only so much time.
Trump has been the leader of the party under 3 losing campaigns, back to back to back. The only thing worse than being a 3-time loser is being a 4-time loser.
Hello, I'm Robert Costa in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. The impasse over the debt ceiling continues as key leaders prepare to meet next week. And today, lawmakers expressed sharp divisions during a Senate hearing. The top Democrat on the Budget Committee said the Republican bill would cause economic harm to the country, while Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer
we raised the debt limit under President Trump were paired with spending increases.
is dead on arrival in the upper chamber. For more on this, Nicole Killian and Caitlin Huey-Burns join us now. Nicole is a CBS News congressional correspondent. Caitlin is a CBS News political correspondent. But we begin with Nicole on Capitol Hill. Nicole, thanks for being here. Tell me about the key leaders that are coming to this meeting next week. You have Hakeem Jeffries and Kevin McCarthy in the House, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell in the Senate. What are the dynamics at play?
Well, the dynamics are going to be an interesting one because I don't know that they've all been in the same room, but certainly not all in the same room, talking about this topic, even though they have all had plenty to say on this issue. You know, the real question is going to be whether or not they can move towards some type of agreement or deal. As you well know, Bob, the White House has made clear that they simply want a clean debt limit increase. There is not room for negotiation on anything else. They can discuss fiscal matters in a separate conversation. But Republicans remain in lockstep. Speaker McCarthy, as well as Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, have both kind of been on the same page in terms of backing this Republican bill that passed the House. And McConnell made clear there's really no room for the Senate to be involved at this point. He really thinks there should be a deal struck between McCarthy and the president. We know, of course, Hakeem Jeffries and Leader Schumer have been closely coordinating as far as their messaging with respect to the debt limit. So certainly a lot of eyes will be on this meeting and a lot of hope and anticipation that something can come out of it productive to avoid the U.S. economy being on this path where we're heading closer to that cliff.
What's one of the main Republican requests here? It looks like from some of the details in our reporting, it's about freezing spending levels. Tell us a little bit more about this Republican position, this ask ahead of this meeting.
Well, that's right. And we heard both sides really kind of drill down on their points in this hearing that took place earlier today here on the Hill. In fact, we learned from Chief Economist Mark Zandi that X date where the U.S. could hit that default could be as soon as June 8th, although he said that could come by June 1st, which is certainly what the Treasury Department has warned. And he said in a best case scenario, it could be August 8th. But that being said, Republicans believe that, Democrats' spending is out of control, and they really need to rein it in. And so that's why, to them, they really don't want to increase the debt limit unless there's some meaningful steps that are taken towards spending reforms. And that is, a big part of why you saw House Republicans muscle that plan through in 2 weeks, which contains $4.5 trillion worth of cuts. So Republicans really see that as their starting point and their opening argument as they prepare to meet with the president.
Nicole Killian, we'll let you get back to work. Thank you very much. We turn now to Caitlin Huey-Burns about her latest reporting. But let's begin, Caitlin, with your conversation with a top advisor to President Biden, Anita Dunn. We'll have it in a second, I believe. We'll go to it in 1 minute then.
The president had said that he is not going to negotiate with Republicans. Now he is going to sit down with them. Isn't that a negotiation?
The president has been clear since the beginning of the year, which is that, sending America into default for the first time in our history is actually not a negotiable thing. It never has been negotiable. It never will be negotiable. But that he is happy to talk about budget and appropriations. He is happy to talk about how do we reduce our deficit in the long term. And he made it very clear back in February he was going to send his budget to Congress in March with his priorities. He sent a budget that cuts the deficit by $3 trillion over 10 years, and that when the Republicans had a proposal, we should put them together and then we should talk.
In this meeting next week, what exactly is the president going to want in terms of a commitment?
Well, I think what the president expects is, first of all, for Congress to do its job. This is actually Congress's job. The president cannot raise the debt limit. It is their job to do this, right? It is their job to keep us from defaulting. But what he also would like to do, and he has been clear about this, is that there is a place, and it's an appropriate time now, for the congressional leaders to begin the kinds of budget discussions that, frankly, you have when one house is controlled by the Republicans, the other house is controlled by Democrats. So this should move forward. And the president has been consistent since the beginning of the year that he felt that there would have to be these budget discussions, but that has nothing to do with keeping the United States economy from going into default.
Kevin McCarthy argues that he's already done his job, that he passed a measure last week through his conference that it's very difficult to do for him. He has argued that he's done his job.
Well, Caitlin, I don't know, maybe they need to go back to School of Rock and look at how a bill becomes law, but he has begun his job because, the job is first the House passes something, then of course the Senate has to pass something, and Leader Schumer has already said what the House passed is never going to pass the Senate.
Nobody's closer to President Biden than Anita Dunn. Maybe Mike Donnellan, but I mean, she has been at his side through all of the turmoil and challenges, but also some of the high points during his presidency. One part of that interview was so intriguing. She talked about the president's willing to negotiate on budget measures. So when you look at the big picture here, maybe they're not going to have any kind of debt limit agreement that the president's going to put spending cuts on the table. But could we see some kind of compromise, Caitlin, where President Biden agrees to future spending cuts if the debt limit is extended?
Well, that certainly was implied that they're willing to have that conversation. But again, making sure that they are separate conversations. The White House still maintains that they don't want any sort of attachment to a raising of the debt ceiling. But what's significant here is that the two sides are sitting down, but they are still so far apart on the policy. You and I both covered the last iteration of this back in 2013 when Biden was kind of the lead negotiator.
Don't age us, Caitlin.
I know. I was like,
We're
I
just
feel
starting out here.
a lot older now. Still the same kinds of fights. But what's interesting is Biden does, of course, have experience, but it's so different this time around because, as Nicole mentioned, then he was dealing one-on-one with McConnell.
Is that how this ends, Caitlin? Could it be Biden at the end of the day saying, Speaker McCarthy, maybe stay to the side, I'm going to cut a deal at the 11th hour with McConnell?
I mean, the difference here, though, is that the House Republicans control the House. So they have to get something out of the House. And as you know, McCarthy's speakership could be on the line if he has to cut any sort of deal that involves Democrats. What I do think is interesting here, though, is that the White House still is very adamant that Congress is responsible here. Yes, they are going to set up this meeting next week with the leaders, but Anita Dunn told me that essentially, look, this is up to Congress. We trust, I asked, do you trust McCarthy as an honest broker in this deal? And she said that they trust congressional leaders to realize that defaulting is just a terrible thing for the economy. So I would note, too, that, we have till June, but Congress has limited days that they're actually in session. The Senate just left this afternoon to head out of town. So the calendar here is very narrow.
We'll get back to your interview with Anita Dunn later in the show. Caitlin Huey-Burns will be sticking around. Thanks for joining us for this initial discussion. And you can catch more of Caitlin's interview with the senior advisor to the president, Anita Dunn, later on in this show. 4 members of the far-right Proud Boys have been found guilty of seditious conspiracy related to the January 6th Capitol riot. 5 defendants, including former Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio were charged with 9 counts for their alleged roles in attempting to overturn the 2020 election. All 5 were found guilty of obstructing an official proceeding, while only 4 were convicted on sedition charges. The 5th member of the group, Dominic Pizzola, was acquitted on the seditious conspiracy count. And as Chris Sununu continues to mull over a 2024 bid, CBS News spoke with the New Hampshire governor about his timetable and what he thinks about former President Trump potentially sitting out the debates. That's next. You're streaming America Decides.
Hey there, welcome to the Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was gonna be born, he was only gonna live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
CBS Mornings.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
I always tell people that Twitter would not be Twitter without Black Twitter. It's just us being in fellowship with each other.
And it becomes a conversation you don't want to be left out of.
People really started to recognize the power of activism on Twitter.
Based on that one tweet, the hashtag #OscarSoWhite was trending around the world.
If anything has really powered Black Twitter, it's been humor.
If your food ain't right, oh, we're gonna tell you about that too.
We tend to create change, create culture and cool.
That's how movements happen on Black Twitter and go beyond more than that.
Black Twitter, the Twitterverse that changed a generation. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We go to stories because we can bring someone to that story. That human connection is incredibly important. The news doesn't have to be depressing.
What do you love about running? Energy!
It can be uplifting.
Welcome back to America Decides. New Hampshire Republican Governor Chris Sununu remains undecided on whether he will jump into the presidential race for 2024. CBS News spoke with Sununu Wednesday and began by asking him which way he is leaning.
You know what? I don't believe in being coy. I really don't. But I'm kind of all over the place a little bit in that I'm talking to a lot of folks. There's a lot of folks that want me to get in. My mission right now is I'm a team player. I want the Republican Party to get bigger. I want to make sure we have more independents. I want to make sure there's more younger voters back on the team. We kind of disenfranchise them. I want to talk about the best parts of what we believe in, which is limited government and local control, low taxes, individual responsibility, not big government solutions. I think when we talk about that, we get people excited to get back on board. And otherwise, I think we get distracted with a lot of these other, what I would call ancillary issues, but aren't core to actually bringing this country back. So I just want to be the best team player I can, and whether that's me in the race or out of the race, I'm not sure exactly what it means. I'll probably make a decision in the next month or so, just because that's the logistics timing that a candidate would need to really make sure that they, meet all the markers, get ballot access, and make sure that they can run a truly competitive race.
Former Vice President Mike Pence recently told me he will make a decision by late June. Is it fair to say that's your time frame as well? Late June, you'll have a decision?
Oh, by late June at the latest. Yeah, you can't really go beyond late June, because ballot access itself, or making sure you have enough small donation donors, which is going to be a metric for getting on the debate stage. And if you're not on the debate stage, at least early on, that's really going to be the biggest filter, if you will. And then those barriers will get a little higher as we go deeper into the fall. And to make those barriers, you're going to have to get in a little earlier. So I think late June is the rough date for pretty much everybody.
Okay, let's say you go to Des Moines, Iowa, you get into the race this summer, and they say, Chris, who are you? What's your 1 or 2 sentence introduction to that Iowa voter who has no idea about who you are?
Well, look, I think any candidate has to go and be about themselves first, right? And what I'm trying to bring to the table is I'm the guy that's able to get stuff done no matter what hand I'm dealt. And unfortunately, if you look at former President Trump, for example, he was given Republicans in the House and Republicans in the Senate, and he still didn't give us health care reform. He still didn't drain the swamp. He still didn't secure the border, right? So I've got a record. I usually have Republicans. Sometimes I have Democrats. Either way, I always get my conservative agenda done, and we bring a very different approach in terms of how to do it, right? We don't sit there and scream at people and yell at people and only play to a base and only play to extremes. I think my team kind of approaches it the right way, what America is looking for, with a more optimistic view, and again, that record of success. I'm not just promising I might do something. I'm saying, look at my record. Look how we've been able to do it. Look how we can connect with you and your family and your business on the issues that are driving you every day, not just this fluffy policy stuff or political stunts. We really engage folks one-on-one. I love doing that. That's why I love my job. I love engaging with people.
Former President Trump having a CNN town hall in New Hampshire, coming to your state. What's your view of what that event reveals about where he is as a candidate?
Well, I got to say, I think it's a great move. I think it's a great move on his part and CNN's part. He's understanding that you don't just go to the typical conservative media outlets like a Fox or something like that. You got to talk to voters everywhere, wherever they're getting their information. And my guess is it's whether it's CNN or others, whether it's Trump or other candidates. Most other candidates can and should and will be engaging with all these different media sources, I think, as this thing progresses. So I think it's a great thing for the Republican Party, because if you want to win, if you want to be a winner, you got to engage everybody. You can't just kind of rely on a locked-in base. So strategically, I think it's a good move, but he's got to perform. He can't just get up there and play the victim card. I know he's getting a lot of press off of that right now, but he's got to explain, why didn't you drain the swamp when you said you would? Why didn't you secure the border when you said you would? And you can't go blaming other people. This is politics. Blaming somebody else for not getting your agenda done, well, that's like the Bruins blaming the Florida Panthers for beating them in 7 games the other day. You don't blame the other team because they won. That's just acknowledging that you're the loser, right? And so we want winners. We don't just want people that fight. We want people that fight and win, fight that bring results. And so he's got to explain why he wasn't able to do that the first term, what fundamentally is going to change, and how he can truly win in November. Because if he can't show that, we as a party are going to move on to another candidate.
Trump is showing up in New Hampshire, but it's not clear he is going to show up at that first debate. Should Trump be there on the debate stage?
Of course. You cannot stand in front of America and say, I'm a fighter, but I'm going to wimp out and not get on a debate stage and engage in the fight, engage in the kind of that debate that has to happen on issues and what you're about, right? You can't wimp out now. So, I think he's going to be there. I think this is a lot of talk myself. And the message is just really clear. Cowboy up, get in the saddle, show us what you got. Because if you want to be the leader of this country and the leader of the free world, you got to show that you can still bring your fastball.
Do you think Trump still has his political fastball?
No, that much is clear. Look, even when he comes to New Hampshire, these other events, you don't see the energy, you don't see the fire. You see him playing a victim. It's kind of the woe is me, poor me. that DA is beating up on me in New York. And guess what? I actually sympathize with him on that issue. But that does not translate into why we should vote for you again, right? So he plays that victim card. You can't be both the victimizers become the victim, the fighter has become the woe is me guy. So he's trying to have it both ways, and eventually that he's going to have to kind of pick a path here. You know, you can't be all of kind of a you can't have a spectrum of phoniness. If you're going to be a phony, you got to pick your lane, and so he's going to have to try to figure that out.
Trump is on the march in many polls, continues to gain traction. Are you still confident in your statement that he will not be the Republican nominee?
No, well, yes. I mean, look, he could be the nominee. Let's be very clear. I think he's doing much better today than I thought he would be doing a few months ago. I think the DA issue in New York has drastically, pushed his polls 20 points higher than they otherwise should be. I think some of the other candidates aren't surging like I think we thought they might. So that's creating opportunity for him to galvanize an even bigger base. So I give him credit. I think he's playing his political card correct today. But at the end, we're still 8-9 months away from the first of the nation primary and over a year away from the convention. So we don't count your chickens before they hatch. I think we've all learned that game in politics. So I just think there's so much more to play out. Could he be the nominee? Yes. But my true belief is that Republicans are going to remember what happened in November of 22, remember the losses that we took with him, his candidates, and his messaging, and say, we don't want losers. We don't want losers. We're tired of losing. We're going to go after and nominate winning candidates, whether it's on the presidential side, the Senate side, the gubernatorial side. We don't want a presidential candidate that drags the rest of the ticket down. That's exactly what happened in 2018, right, when we lost the House, 2020 when we lost the presidency, 2022 when we should have had 53 or 54 U.S. senators and we're stuck with 49. We have been losing, and Trump has been the leader of the party under 3 losing campaigns, back to back to back. The only thing worse than being a 3-time loser is being a 4-time loser, and none of us want that.
Governor Chris Sununu of New Hampshire, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Meanwhile, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis giving another sign his entry into the 2024 race could be imminent. What he said today about jumping into the already growing Republican field. You're streaming America Decides.
An original documentary from CBS reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She dazzled on the court and off the court as a businesswoman.
Thank you for joining us on Person to Person. Tennis superstar and entrepreneur, Serena Williams.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I asked my students, what are we going to do about racism in the United States?
The backlash over teaching about racism in American schools.
I don't think it has any place in the classroom.
We can either pretend and say, no, we're not racist and we're all great people, or we can actually start to do the really, really hard work of addressing it.
How did you lose your job? I made the statement that white privilege is a fact.
Is it helping diversity and inclusion?
When you bring in different people's stories and experience, it enriches education.
If you don't talk about something, it doesn't go away.
Or driving us further apart.
What schools are doing to our children in the name of anti-racism is in fact teaching them racism.
The intention is to put us in this war against each other.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgment of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Welcome back to America Decides. Let's break down some of the other 2024 headlines and developments. Joining us is Caitlin Huey-Burns, again, back at the table, along with our colleague Finn Gomez, CBS News' political director. Let's begin with another potential contender here, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Our colleague Aaron Navarro, along with our colleague Ed O'Keefe in Florida today, doing a little reporting. Let's hear what Aaron had to ask the Florida governor.
At the end of the day, these things will happen in relatively due course. I mean, you know, the season is what it is. I mean, there's only so much time. So you're just gonna have to stay tuned on all this, okay? You know, you'll get there one way or another very soon.
Back in 1992, Finn, there was a famous phrase for Mario Cuomo, the then New York governor, Hamlet on the Hudson. He couldn't decide whether he was going to jump into the presidential race. Seems like we have a Hamlet in Tallahassee. We have a Hamlet in Manchester. When are these people going to decide? Is it that late June deadline for everyone?
Yes, I think. I mean, you know, as long as you don't get a Macbeth type also, by the way, Bob, but I think that with, nice. You know, with DeSantis, I think it's now or never. You know, it's coming up where it's like you either jump on the boat or you're going to miss the boat. And I think we all see that. He's been saying for months that it's getting, you know, wait till after the session is over in Tallahassee. Well, that's happening tomorrow. Let's go. What's he going to do?
Caitlin, you have been talking to top Biden official Anita Dunn today at the White House. She rarely speaks to the press, so that's a pretty big reporting coup to get Anita Dunn's insights. Let's hear what she had to say about 2024 and President Biden.
Just watch him and then look at how much he has accomplished in 2 years, more than any 2-year period of any president for decades. But voters are going to, you know, I can't talk about the election, but people are going to make judgments based on what they see. So I would just say watch him and watch what he has gotten done and then watch who he's fighting for.
Anita Dunn being careful with the Hatch Act, but still making a few comments about 2024. What was your assessment of how she framed the stakes, how she framed the race?
Well, it was interesting because I asked about this age question, and I asked about it in the context of Nikki Haley, who we've been talking about this week, really leaning into this age question and going as far to say that Biden may not live through his second term. You've heard that from the president as well, though. Watch me, watch what I do. But I also think it's interesting the way in which this campaign is also likely to, you know, really focus on Trump. And I think that is such a key feature here. And that's what I'm interested in watching, too, is, you know, whether Democrats do see any scenario where Trump is not the nominee. Because right now, this is the contrast that they are trying to strike. And even if it's not Trump, trying to paint everybody with a Trump brush.
One thing about politics is you never know what's going to come around the corner. And we didn't know a few years ago the global pandemic would be such a dominating thing in our politics. We don't know where the war in Ukraine is going. Vladimir Putin, hard to read from time to time. I'm always curious where that's going to go as a political issue. Let's hear what former President Trump had to say in an interview across the pond on this issue.
If I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well. I know Putin well. It would be easy. That deal would be easy. A lot of it has to do with the money. A lot of it has to do with the military, you know, that we're giving.
There's a real fault line now, Finn, between the Republicans and the Democrats. President Biden, very internationalist in his foreign policy, how he thinks about the war in Ukraine, and more of that non-interventionist, almost anti-hawkish spirit from the former president. How do you see Ukraine now as a political issue, especially inside the GOP primary race?
Two things. I think Mike Pompeo is probably regretting the fact that he decided not to jump in, right? And two, it's increasing. I remember.
He avoided a nickname, though, Finn.
He did avoid a nickname, but you know that was coming too. But with Ukraine, and like even in Davenport, in Iowa, when we went, Bob, like when we talk to voters, it is a top of mind on many of those voters. And you do see a fault line between the Democrats and Republicans, pro-Ukraine aid and against Ukraine aid, even within the Republican Party, as you say. I think it's something that will grow. I think it's something that, you know, and those with the foreign policy credentials, like Nikki Haley, can step in and say, you know, this is my position, and maybe, you know, maybe make some waves in that area.
And Pence has been so interesting on that as well, too, because he's been trying to kind of bring the party back to the pre-Trump era of Republican Party politics on foreign policy, but pretty much across the board, which is obviously interesting because he was vice president during the Trump administration. But you are starting to see some of these Republicans try to kind of thread that needle, but also kind of talk about a Republican Party that existed before Trump changed it all. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to navigate.
Yet the Biden campaign message is so focused on domestic policy. Let's just take a quick look at one of the Biden campaign ads.
Joe Biden is determined to reward hard work. That's why he passed historic laws that rebuild our roads and bridges, invest in our factories, and bring back American manufacturing. Over 12 million jobs have been created.
When I talk to Biden sources, it's so clear that on foreign policy, he's a former chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He's focused on that every day, how to deal with China, how to deal with Putin. At the same time, politically, such a focus on manufacturing, trying to cut back into that populist appeal Trump has made in the past decade. Based on your conversation with Anita Dunn, how do you see the Biden campaign and the Biden White House trying to win back some of those working voters who may have drifted right?
Yeah, and you heard her there suggest that they want to focus on what they see as accomplishments, and particularly when it comes to jobs and also implementing a lot of the policy. We're in a divided Congress, so there's not going to be a lot of new initiatives passed. A lot of this is going to be about implementation and reminding voters, they say, about what they've done, especially on things like infrastructure.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, Finn Gomez. Finn, we'll get you next time to get the final question. That does it all for our program today. You can stream America Decides Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News.
In today's Money Watch, business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to help.
How do you even begin to make the best use of your money?
If you've got a match from your employer, don't give away that money.
Dollar Jill, y'all.
CBS Mornings, starting at 7.